What's going on, guys, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Kyle, and I'm going to be your host for today and every other time. I don't know why I said today, it doesn't really make much sense, but this is Life's Wreck, the podcast where I chat with really interesting people about the world of mental health in a way that is casual. I was going to say conversational, but casual. Marry the two. Casual. Funny, maybe, hopefully, and you know, hopefully bring a little bit of a human element to the world of mental health, because I find that sometimes it can be a bit stale and people can get a bit clinical with all of it. And I think we've all seen our fair share of doctors' offices and you know, doom and gloom for the past long time. So yeah, you know, you got to spice things up a little bit. And I'm excited for multiple reasons. First of all, this is my first episode I'm recording in my new place, which is great. Still, you know, just like this podcast, just like all of us, this place is a work in progress. That lamp back there doesn't work. You know, still working on, I've got a dryer from like 1930 that I'm trying to make work. So, you know, hiccups along the way, but we're fine and we're here. And yeah, so not only am I in the new place, we have an incredible guest today, which I'll get to in a sec, but also, if you listen to the audio version of the podcast, which I hope you do, it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you want to get your podcast. We now, not only are we now partnered with Tether, but our relationship with Tether has grown to now a point where we have a referral code, which I'm very excited about. So basically, in the description of this podcast episode, if you're looking to sign up for a Tether pod, and what is a Tether pod? What a great question. What a great place to start. So basically, Tether pods are the accumulation of what Tether has done within their social media platform by bringing a group of men together who want a space to talk about what's going on between their ears and a non-judgmental space to just not be okay. And that community is just so absolutely fantastic. We've worked with them now for, you know, I'd say over a year, probably pretty close. And they've done some really, really cool things. Men's mental health is obviously like, you know, it's my thing, man. I'm telling you, like, I love it. So the work that Tether is doing is incredible. And now with these Tether pods, basically what they do is it's a virtual men's night. So you get groups of men together and you divide them into intimate groups of 4 or 5 men. And it's an opportunity to build closer relationships with men from literally around the world, centered around mental health. And I have been with the same group of guys now for 7 months, and these guys have become like, you know, they become a fixture in my support system. They become a backbone some days. Like I lean on these guys and they lean on me, and it's this incredible relationship. And now, if you would like to try out a Tether pod, which I highly, highly recommend, I will put my backing behind Tether till the cows come home, because I love what these guys are doing. If you want to try the Tether pods, use the referral link in our description and we get a little bit of a kickback. So when you sign up for the Tether pods, now the podcast, using this referral link, the podcast now gets a little bit of a kickback, which is absolutely incredible. So now it helps us support this, you know what I mean? Like, it helps us support the projects that we're working on and the ability to grow into something that is continuing to become bigger than all of us who are already working here. So it's really cool. And you know, I'm super stoked to be working with Tether in that capacity. So check out the referral link, blah, 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 blah. You know, do something good for yourself and do something good for your favorite mental health podcast, because it's a nice thing to do and you are a good person. So go do that. Now, okay, now hopping into things. Today, I'm really excited about this one, because this is 2 young people in their early 20s just like chopping it up about mental health, and different perspectives because of different backgrounds, different upbringings, different experiences, both around the same age between myself and our guest. And it's really cool, man. I'm telling you. So basically what had happened was I got a LinkedIn message from a woman named Minh Hanh Corey, and the name had actually sounded a little bit familiar. I clicked on it. I saw that, you know, her line of work was in mental health advocacy. I get a lot of messages from advocates, and Amy just kind of wanted to introduce herself. It was really amazing. She just wanted to introduce herself and tell me a little bit about her experiences and give me some props on the podcast, which is always a good way to network. And basically we started chatting. We hopped on a call, and when I learned everything that this woman was doing, I was floored. So Amy is 24 years old. She is a TEDx speaker, a mental health advocate, a singer, a songwriter, a global ambassador for Holt International and HCMC, Peace and Development Foundation. There's not much that this woman doesn't do, and hearing not only like what she does around the world. She's an ambassador over in Vietnam for mental health advocacy. She has toured around the States doing mental health advocacy, where she is such an incredible person. She's got such an incredible story, and I don't want to like spoil it for you right now, because as we get into the episode, you're going to hear more about her experiences, and I think that it's a story that only she can tell. So without further ado, and without getting too much into it, Amy, thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out. I'm so happy that we connected. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Well, I'm good. I'm excited about the switch that we are now very into fall, and we're feeling fall. And I think for anyone who's in business, anyone who has a continuous career gets a little bit of anxiety at the end of the year on everything we didn't do this year and everything we have to do next year. And I think I feel that every year it's just anxiety months, especially when I was in the music industry. Like, I remember I would go into my manager and I would have the exact same issues as, Dolly and all the other people. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're just kind of like, oh, I was supposed to do so much this year. Right. And now you move it on to the next year. So I feel that type of anxiety. But I think always I'm able to just kind of ground myself with and be like, okay, there's still time. So that's kind of been my mood. And it's been a long day of other meetings and stuff like that. So I'm ready to have a nice therapy session. I love podcasts because, you get to speak, and by speaking, you let things out that you might be holding in.
100%.
So I've always loved that aspect of podcasts as well. So I'm doing really well.
Good. Well, I'm glad. And I'm glad that you're here. I mean, this is, for me, like, this is my therapy. And a huge form of therapy for me is connecting with very, interesting, amazing people like yourself, and having real conversations and being able to share them. And just even like when I'm going through this transitional period of my life where I'm changing geographical locations, I hopped on the mic last week and recorded an episode, just me basically staring at a blank wall in my new apartment, talking about what I was going through. And it was so nice at the end of it, like sitting down. And I think that this is the case with a lot of things, like sitting down was so tough. Like actually just kind of saying like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to record a podcast episode was really tough. Kind of had to fight it a little bit. But once I got done, I was just like, this is the best. This is bliss.
I know, it's amazing. I feel like whenever you have to just do things that are your comfort zone, you have the anxiety, and then you just get into it and you just are like, yeah, this is fine. This is just fantastic. That used to happen when I would sing. I would dread going to some gigs, and then you're upstairs or on stage doing what you love. You just then never want it to end. And you're like, okay, why was I, anxious at the beginning?
Yeah.
I just love it.
Have you ever reflected on that and kind of thought like, why do it? Because with me personally, sharing from my own experience, like I always find that it's this idea of, I've always battled with perfection a lot in my life. This idea that I create this problem almost where it's like, I have to sit down and I have to put together the best podcast episode, or I have to put together the best public speaking performance, or whatever it may be. And then once I get up and I kind of just like let myself be human and let the flaws happen and just kind of let whatever's on my mind kind of come out. And you're like, you know what, this just feels a little bit more natural. So, I mean, why would you experience that kind of little bit of excitement, anxiety feeling?
I was that way too. I used to be really intense. I used to be, if it's not going to be perfect, if I know I'm not 110%, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I
preaching to the choir.
Anything. Yeah. You don't want anything less than the best. But I think mentally, I realized that by putting myself at the top already, when I know there is still so much to grow, in the end, you never want to be the best or the smartest in the room. And I think most of the time I was just in a room with myself, and I really thought that I was at the top. And then I would critique myself so hard. I would film everything and judge myself so hard. And it actually was a lot of my older mentors who kind of just, told me to just close my eyes and then open my mouth. And then when I opened my eyes, to just start and to just go. And it brought down that series a lot more, to know that, I do my best every single time, but I should never think I am the best in it.
Right.
And to always be nervous and to always just have that passion to do your best instead of just automatically just giving up because you know it's not going to be that way.
Yeah, that actually reminds me a lot of, I had a friend in university who was kind of like one of my earliest inspirations, I guess you could say, in terms of performance, because she was this really incredible actor who had started acting at a young age, had been on like iconic shows like Caillou and Degrassi, and she had done like really amazing stuff. And I kind of talked to her about when I first started the podcast, how nervous I got interviewing people. And one of the things she said about performance is anytime you go into a performance, it's almost like you're a plant who has direct sunlight for the time that you're on that stage. You kind of get the opportunity where it's like you don't owe that time to anybody else, but like as long as you get what you need and you kind of grow from that experience, it wasn't a wasted experience by any means. And it makes it so much easier to talk to people when you don't hold yourself to that level of like, oh, I have to ask boom, right question at boom, right time. And instead it's just like, I've got 45 minutes to kind of hone my craft and work on growth within myself and within these skills that I really enjoy. And it's just, it's a lot of fun for sure. So yes.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't know that you, and I can't tell that you were ever nervous. And I think that's the thing is
Thank
that
you.
it's
Mission accomplished,
like,
baby. Let's
I
go.
know, right? You
Yeah.
did it. You did. So it's like, it's just a muscle. Everything you do is
Right.
a
Oh,
muscle
100%.
and you just work it out and you get better and better and better. But there's always room to be better. And I
Yeah.
think that's when you're too perfectionist, you think that you don't need to go anywhere. There's no need to grow. And I think that's what keeps so many, especially me, it kept me in my mind to where like I thought that I automatically had to be perfect. And so
Right.
I thought I was. And that is the dangerous mindset because then you destroy yourself when you're a human and you make mistakes or
Right.
you know, have something come up or you miss one line.
Yeah.
And just not, you know, you just can figure that, you know, okay, it doesn't mean it was a bad performance. Like, you know, I've had mics go out on me or
Classics.
amps or something. Yeah, the classics, and no one notices except you.
Right. Yeah.
But then they still all think it's the best performance. So why poison what your job is to make someone else's happiness happy if you think it's bad, but they think it's wonderful? Like, don't poison how the experience was.
That's a really beautiful way of putting performance, because I think that like when you're in the field that we're in terms of like public speaking and that kind of stuff, it's like you are essentially providing a service, like, you know, and that can be really daunting. But I'm really curious kind of like how you kind of found music and how you found your performance life, because I mean, we'll talk about everything that, you know, we've kind of already had a little bit of a chance to discuss. But one of the things I really want to start on hearing you talk about Dolly and, you know, being in Nashville and watching your TED Talk and hearing you sing, which was, by the way, incredible. So like, yes, kudos to you, because it's supremely talented. And if anybody hasn't checked it out, I will put, you know, your TED Talk and any music that you'd like to share in the description of this episode, because it was really, I was very much blown away. So, you know, just had to make sure that I slipped that in there. But yeah, how did you find music?
Well, you're so sweet. I appreciate it. My parents accidentally got me like a tiny child's karaoke machine when I was like 1 year old.
Amazing.
So it's really their fault. And, you know, my family is very traditional in jobs with doctors and lawyers. And so I stuck through it. I stuck with it. And for my 8th birthday, I got to start vocal lessons with a guy named Ken Orso, who was taught by a guy named Seth Riggs, who made Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And then when I moved to Nashville, I never gave up. And I had that 10 years of vocal lessons. And I decided that, you know, I was always told growing up to never get into a fight unless you know everything you're fighting for. And I felt like I could hold myself in this industry, and I felt like I didn't need college. So I moved to Nashville instead of going to college. And I just loved singing. When I was 9, I did my first big performance and I sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and I got my first standing ovation.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
To start out with that big performance as my first, I just fell in love with the stage. I fell in love not only with like myself being on that stage doing what I love, but the audience's happiness and their reaction to something I was doing. That's what really got me on to performing, was taking away my passion and working hard for, singing and performing. It was the reaction, the happiness it gave people. And that really became that passion on just wanting to help people, whether it was with my music, my speaking, or just talking on the streets. And so when I moved to Nashville, I just 7 days a week did, writers' nights. And it was the best time of my life because I had no other responsibilities.
Amazing.
And I eventually, I came into Nashville knowing that, I was uneducated a lot. I didn't have a lot of experiences. And when I was 18, I hired a lawyer who has saved my career and my butt.
Very smart.
In every contract and everything I've done. And then I felt safe enough to just go out and to just be myself and see who was open. Because I mean, I am Asian going into the country music scene in 2015.
Right.
So it was very, I knew it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
And so with that mindset, my walls went up to being like, this is going to be hard, but I'm just going to do it. And I eventually started looking into artist development, knowing that, there was still a lot I wanted to learn in the business and the music side and in my own brand and who I want to be. And I signed with Kent Wells, who's Dolly Parton's producer. And that was a really big step in and it was only a year after I moved to Nashville. Wow. We were able to work that person. And how
was your mental health throughout that whole process? Because I mean, like, that sounds like a lot of big changes and a lot of exciting changes, but like very quickly and, in a time where a lot of other people, our age, would have been kind of going through a much more structured part of their life. And, those are key development years. So, I mean, like, how did you go about keeping yourself mentally healthy during such a exciting, but I'm sure very like nerve-wracking time?
Yeah, I look back and I think I could never do it again. Like, that's the interesting thing. I was just like, I had so much energy. And like, as much energy as I have now, it's a different type of energy. I always say it's really fun and it's really easy to create something because all you have to do is put in the hard work and the knowledge to do that. It's harder to maintain something. And so during that time, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. And so nothing surprised me in this. I just was able to be like, okay, this is the challenge now. What's the solution? And that was a very healthy way to make sure that I wasn't destroyed by the influences or the negativity or the hatred aspect of it. It was really just me against me. But I knew that, I could do, and I believed in myself and I believed in what I could do. And I knew that, I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And that fire and that passion led me. And I think at that time too, I was, paying rent. I had a day job. I was doing all the work, but at 18 and 19, especially moving from a tiny, tiny town in Southern Oregon, I still was very innocent to the world. And so a lot of things that I'm aware about now, I was not at that time.
Right.
Where I, was making my own money, but I didn't have as many responsibilities or things to pay or employees to pay, this and that. It was just me being able to use my money to whatever I wanted to and my time, and not have to worry about, the things that cross my mind nowadays.
Right, exactly.
Not every day. And then I was very strict too with my love life. I was single that entire time as well. So it was just me. I didn't see, my family that much. I just stuck to it and did what I can and just was like, I'm going to work now and I'm going to celebrate that time later. So.
See, it's interesting because I'm somebody who I've actually had to kind of go out of my way in life to celebrate the process. Because I found that I've been very tough on myself as I've kind of went through this whole journey, which I definitely see a little bit of reflection in your story and kind of what I'm going through, even just right now. This idea of working a day job, pursuing the dream, being in a new space, kind of like that, focus in now and focus on me. So, it's definitely, it's always interesting to hear how people kind of go about their process because it's always so different, but you have to find what works for you. And I love the fact that you were able to do that. One thing that I did want to point out is when you're talking about me versus me, that's so mental health oriented, that me versus me mentality. And I'm kind of curious, like when you recognize that, because obviously hearing about your story, you went through a lot in your younger years that were very like external sources, cyberbullying, bullying. I can imagine that you versus you was a really tumultuous relationship for a long time.
Yeah. And so I think that's what really helped me in my recovery years, and why, I did go through a lot with the cyberbullying and
Hmm.
self-harm and eating disorders and attempted suicide when I was in my earlier teenage years.
Hmm.
And it was always pretty much me versus me.
Right.
And it got to a point where, when I was about to come out of these issues to recovery, when I was literally going cold turkey, it was just brought upon me by my mind that, the only person standing in my way to do exactly what I want to do with my life, to stop what I'm doing with what I'm doing right now, is myself.
Mm.
Like, it's just my like shadow self
Yeah.
telling me that there's nothing better than this life than what I was living,
Feel
and
that.
settling for that. So
Yeah.
it was me versus me. And
Mm.
I kind of just pushed her down and kept moving forward.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And I find that for me, like I was somebody who, seeing the abuse that I went through at my own hands, it made me, it was like this compounded hate for yourself, right? Because you felt, or I felt, I should never say you, I felt that if my inner self, if my true self, or what I believe to be like my true self, hated me so much, this kind of like mind brain, almost kind of two spirit clashing kind of thing, then I was going to try to push back. And then all of a sudden you've just got this internal fight back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there's very little peace in that time. And so as I grew up, like it was truly that idea of, it's like, it's not me versus me anymore. It's like me versus me, but like we're on the same team. We're going against the world, but like we're playing for the same team here. Like, why are we trying to hold ourselves back? So that was a huge realization for me, and it definitely sounds like that. Something similar might have happened with you as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, it's always nice to talk to people who have, experienced stuff too, but have
Oh,
made it
of
out and
course,
have
yeah.
that mindset. But I think that's a really big thing. Is I always say now that the way you love yourself, the way you're kind to yourself, is showing the world how to be that to you as well. And
Mm,
so I think for so long I was hating myself so much, and then a lot of hatred just came into my life and into my way, and that was that.
mm, yeah. No, it's always funny, like this idea of what you're putting out into the universe, and how you find a lot of it coming back to you. And it's like, and it's scary, because a lot of the time when you are in a dark place, like that can compound with external factors, whether it's like relationships crumbling. I know when I was at my darkest, I had went through like a breakup. I was having trouble at work. I was having trouble maintaining friend groups. And it was like, as this like internal life was crumbling, like external life was crumbling, and then as I pick the pieces back up and build the internal back up, everything else seemed to kind of click back into place. And that was, and that was really great. So it really does, it starts and ends with you.
Oh, always, always. I think as long as your inner world is happy, is good, is safe for you, no matter what happens externally, you're always somewhat calm, because you
Mm-hmm.
know that in the end, it's safe where you are. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in 2020, I felt that, because I actually lived here in Nashville for 6 months, and I lived in London, England for the other half, and realized that externally, nowhere was really safe. The
Mm.
safest place for me was within myself, and it's the only way I was able to stay calm through that time. And
Yeah.
so as long as you're nurturing yourself and your body and your soul, and you're
Mm-hmm.
taking care of yourself, the world will take care of you, and others will take care of you as well.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do want to backtrack on, and I'm sorry, I am bad for this. I'm somebody who, like, I hear something in a conversation, I pick up on it, I'm like, oh, I want to jump in and ask that right away, but then it's like, oh, I don't want to interrupt, and then the next thing you know, you're like on a topic way down the road, and you're like, okay, I still want to hit on this point.
I'm
One,
so with you.
it's tough. This is the worst part of interviewing right here, when it's like, hey, pause that thought, let's go back like 3-4 minutes. But one of the things I have to make sure, I think we definitely have to start talking about self-harm in a very
Mhm.
addictive way, because something that you had said of like the idea of, you use addictive terminology to talk about your self-harm. And I think that that's something that people don't really see self-harm as an addictive thing. But I would love if you kind of detail a little bit of your experiences and why you use that kind of terminology to describe what you went through there.
Yeah, of course. So self-harm started out for me from the bullying. I just I didn't feel safe anywhere, and it ended up not feeling safe within myself.
Of course.
And so I talked to a lot of experts and therapists who's like, was it because you wanted to feel something, or was it because you were feeling too much and you're trying to release it? And it was both. At the beginning, I felt very numb and I hated myself and I wanted to feel something. And so I self-harmed, I cut myself and all of that. And then it got to a point where I was happy again. I was feeling, I had emotions, but every single emotion I would cut myself because it felt like too much. And so after that was about a year, it became an addictive personality to, if I was sad, if I was mad, if I was angry, annoyed, heartbroken, I would just rely on the only thing that ever gave me some type of feeling and some type of control, which was that self-harm. And it was that cunning. And that is the only reason and way I actually did it for about 5-6 years, was because it became such a habit and it became so addictive that it was the only thing that kept me, sane at that time, just like alcohol, just like drugs. And I think that is a big misunderstanding that's starting to be understood, is that it's an addictive personality. It replaces the dopamine within you to know that, okay, that's my happiness. And so it's quitting and stopping is as cold turkey as stopping alcohol or drugs. It just, you have to just stop.
Yeah. And was it one of those things that quitting cold turkey? I know that for a lot of people, I've had different addicts or recovering addicts come on the podcast and talk about their experiences, and the idea of cold turkey. Some are like, yep, went cold turkey and it was the hardest 3, 4, 5 months I've ever had, and then it just got like immensely better. Some people kind of talk about how cold turkey is something that wasn't even on their radar because it just wasn't possible at that time. Like, how did you go through that recovery process?
It took me I wanted to get better when I was around 15.
Which is a huge place to start.
Exactly. And that was the thing, is I always say, you got to understand it and you have to communicate it with yourself to be able to communicate with other people. And if you can't, you're just throwing empty words that will never actually stick in either mind. And so I wanted to stop, but I was still addicted to it. I still would break that. And then I found out at the same time I was fighting those, my mom was battling cancer. And so we found out she had about 6 months to live. And I kind of was, for me, that push to not only make her life better for those 6 months, but to make my life better for the rest of that time and also beyond that. And so that was the push for me to go on, quote, cold turkey. But I think, of course, I always say too, it's kind of like when you end a relationship, but you're used to talking to that person every single day. And it's just weird after when you just stop and you don't know what else to do with your life. That's kind of, in a sense, what it's like to quit. You just have to find a new way of comfort and a new, healthier way to comfort, and find the balance between emotions and toxic emotions. I remember for a really long time, I did not let myself cry. I did not let myself feel any emotion, which is why I stayed single. It's why I avoided, relationships and emotions, because I was so scared that if I got emotional, I would turn back to self-harm. And then having to go through that process, I'm like, no, I'm not a robot. I'm a human. I can feel things, and I need to feel things to be able to grow, to be able to understand. But by feeling things, it doesn't mean I just have to go back to self-harm. It means that I can just feel it and cry it out, which I found is the best way to do it. And to find, and understand the root of that, instead of, distracting myself. I always say it was a distraction. It was a habit. It was an addiction going back to that.
Yeah. Well, and reprogramming emotion, I can imagine is a pretty substantial undertaking, especially, when you're going through like something as heartbreaking as the loss of your mom, as you're trying to just learn how to feel healthy, like learn how to feel in a healthy way again. And that was one thing that when you had told me some of your experiences and we had chatted before, like it still sticks with me so much, the fact that you were so young when you did get on this road to recovery. And it's amazing. And I definitely hope that whoever's listening to this podcast, regardless of age, can take something from that story. But it's so interesting to me, and it's really beautiful how you went through such a massive emotional shift when you'd think that the external forces, obviously with, the grief coming up in your life, would be a really tough emotion to handle, but yet you're trying to learn how to feel that in a healthy way. I mean, like what did that process look like for you?
It was really hard, especially because, so my mom passed away right around when I was 16, 17. And then I moved to Nashville when I was 18 and signed to an arts development when I was 19. And then
a lot of emotions.
And a lot of emotions. And then my team never told me to not feel, but I wasn't allowed to feel in public. Like it was a very hard process. I really had to learn by myself, because as supportive as my team was in music for my recovery, they never told me, oh, like, it's fine if she only eats a salad a day, or it's fine, if she's sad so she can write a really good song. Like it wasn't encouraged, but it wasn't looked down upon. And I realized at that time that, I can't rely on anyone else but myself. And I really had to just sit. And obviously I lived alone, and I was able to have that time to myself to really just get to know myself, really get to know my limits, really get to know when I was too tired or to this, or sliding back into a past habit, and just becoming self-aware of myself and my mind is really what, got me moving forward to becoming and working to be the best version of myself, so I can be the best version for my career and for my life and for other people. And I think realizing that, I used to think after everything that happened that nothing else bad could possibly happen, because I've been through everything.
Right. Yeah. You've paid your dues at this point. Like, come on.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. It's like, I paid my dues, but at the same time, I realized that life is life, and life happens. And when life is done teaching you, when life is done guiding you to your whole purpose, that's when you pass away. That's when you die. Yeah. And so why am I frustrated about life instead of just living it and navigating through it and accepting that life is the way it is, and there's only so much I can control? But the number one thing I control is myself, and also my reactions and how I work through things, and my mindset, and just overall me. And so that's why I always say the world doesn't always get better. You just do. The things that used to affect me have no effect. I'm like a Teflon pan to it. It just bounces off. There you go. So it's just learning. But that's the power that I love inspiring and lighting in other people, is that I can show you that it's possible to do, but obviously everyone has a different life. Totally. And so everyone gets to find that and live that within themselves. I just always want to remind people that it's so worth living. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Like that's right. Like it's so true. Like that's one of those things so this is actually a conversation that I was really looking forward to having with you, because one of the things that you brought up in your TED Talk, one of the things that you brought up when we had talked before, is this idea that your hero is you in 10 years. And I love that, because I think that that's absolutely fantastic. And you should always be striving to be and one day meet the best version of yourself. I've always kind of been of the mindset personally that my hero is me 5 years ago, instead of me 10 years from now, because I kind of see the kid who went through all of that, like, pain and that misery, and decided to make the choice to live a happier life, to kind of like cognitively be like, there's an issue here, and if I want to get the most out of this weird thing that we call life, I gotta kind of do something about this. And so now I'm at this point where I'm like the happiest I've ever been. I've got thriving relationships, and that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for that kid way back then. So that kind of that was just something that that had popped in, and just kind of wanted to make sure that I would love to know kind of when that philosophy of like this future self being your hero came about.
Well, first of all, I love that I love when you can accept that this is who you were and you wouldn't be exactly who you are without it. And I always say, and I said in my TEDx talk, is that we suffer from the memories of the past and the imagination of the future. And so it's best to stay present, but it's when you're present, you can write the future based on what you've learned from the past. And that is all. I studied Buddhism for a long time, so that is more of that aspect. But I also just knew that, there's nothing I can change from my past. It has already happened.
Yeah.
But instead of feeling sorry for the girl I was, I thank her for being able to leave all of that with her. And so I always just see it as, 3 different selves, this was who I was. This is exactly who I am now as I work for who I want to be in the future. And that's why I always get so excited when, bad things happen, good things happen, is that it's shaping exactly and transforming me to be someone that I always get so excited to meet, but know that I won't get to be that person unless I'm completely present now to make her.
Right.
And so it's kind of like relationships. Like, I feel like everyone's dream person is out there because you can create it. You can, like if you can create yourself to be whoever you want to be, that person you can create. And there's, 7 billion people in the world.
It's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
So I truly believe that, you can create and become anything and anyone, and that there's no such thing as limits. Limits are meant to be tested. And once you go beyond that limit of what you think is possible, you'll never look back.
Yeah. I always like to kind of think of that very similar situation where it's like, remember those old cartoons that we used to watch as a kid when you watch like the Bugs Bunny show and you got like Wile E. Coyote and he would like paint that thing on the wall and the Roadrunner would like run right through and he's kind of like looking at it like, what the hell is going on here? I always kind of think about that like us too. Like we always kind of like self-impose these boundaries with ourselves and we kind of go like, I see this thing currently in my life based on my experiences, and that means that there is nothing beyond it. And then you just see somebody who comes along and they run right through, and you're just like, what the hell? Like, can I do this too? And then you do, and you're just like, wow, there's so much more that can be hit. And so to push through those tough times and to find that kind of new limit continuously is just such a beautiful thing. So thank you for bringing that up. That's really great.
Thank you. Well, that's a great comparison too. And I think, but that's why I always say that it's nothing to tell someone what to do. You have to show that it's possible. And that ignites the light within themselves to figure out how it can be possible for themselves.
Yeah. Well, and you have to live it too. Like it has to, I think that like people, I've been guilty in the past of not giving people the credit that we're due as just being like creatures we're so receptive and we're so diligent and kind of like what we take in. And so I was always kind of like, oh, like people are just kind of blowing smoke, whatever it might be, or like people are like bragging about, oh, look at this and look at that. And it's like when you actually just do it authentically and you're just like, hey, like I'm not trying to prove anything. I don't want to try to show off, but I'm just like, this is where I was and this is where I am now. And this is me with all my flaws and everything else, but I'm here and I'm just a regular guy. Like, there we go. We can go from point A to point B. So kudos to you for doing that and doing it across.
Same to you.
Thank you. And look at us, eh? Like this is great.
Dream team.
Love it. And I did want to say, like, you're also doing this kind of like inspiration work around the world, because not only are you now in Nashville and in that scene and influencing people across the country, really with your mental health advocacy, but you're also working with the Vietnam government?
Yeah. So I was born in Vietnam and I was adopted when I was 6 months old. And so I'm very, very American, but in all my roots are Vietnamese. And I traveled there in 2019 as an artist and was on tour. And I had an agent in Vietnam, and it was really hard because I actually did about 6 months. I went out of veganism to go back to Vietnam. Like I was fully committed.
Oh, no. How was that process? I ate chicken like I've been vegetarian, pescatarian for like 3 years now. I had like a chicken burger like a year ago and it just tore me apart. So I mean, kudos to you. That's some dedication. For those of you who haven't went vegetarian and then went back, you don't understand the level of commitment that takes. So hey, hats off to you.
Thank you. I always ate meat growing up. I had like a carnivore tooth and everything.
Love it.
And then I went gluten-free and vegan for like health reasons. And then in Vietnam, the most beautiful thing is the meat is so clean. They don't know what GMOs are. Like, so
love that.
the transfer was very, very easy. But I went in 2019 and I truly knew that the biggest thing that could go wrong is when I don't speak fluent Vietnamese, but also I cannot go back to Vietnam because it was the first time I went since I was adopted in 2019. So that was 21, 22 years after I was adopted. I went back for the first time. And I knew I had to go back as Vietnamese and I couldn't go back as an American.
Right.
And by doing that, I went full local. All my friends I met were local. My agent barely spoke, English. Like he spoke English, but to get me to learn, we kept it Vietnamese. And I kind of just had to figure it out because that's the best way to. But I was on, Vietnamese radio. I made a lot of connections, and then one of the connections I made was the assistant to this president of this foundation called the Ho Chi Minh City Peace and Development Foundation. And we started connecting. I started, aligning myself with them because they're sponsored by UNICEF and they work on the new age of peace and compassion within Vietnam and how to move forward from everything they've been through and move forward with open arms to not only everyone within Vietnam, because there's still a lot of tension between North and Central and South, but to also to the world. And it was just such a beautiful message that I really resonated with. And especially being Vietnamese, wants the best for that country and is always rooting that on. And in 2020, they signed me personally, the president, who was the former ambassador to Vietnam, to the EU, and to Belgium, personally invited me to become their fourth ambassador, but the only ambassador that is American.
Wow.
So it
quite
was
the honor, eh?
It was breathtaking. It's
I can
probably one of
absolutely
the most amazing, honorable things because I always wanted to do something in Vietnam, but I never was educated or could ever expect that this was the way to go. But life, the things you expect always happens the way you unexpect.
Of course, naturally.
So
right?
I just let it flow. I say, don't resist. This is a gift, and I've been working with them very closely since, especially with COVID, and supporting as much as I can over there now. So.
What are some of the big things that you've seen and you've kind of been educated on about how mental health rhetoric and kind of like mental health systems differ from America to Vietnam, and kind of like why there's been such a importance put on mental health in one kind of part of the world, and seemingly, in North America as a whole, like mental health still is a very like taboo subject. Let's kind of keep it on the DL. Like if you need to take a personal day, like do it, but don't tell anybody, kind of thing. So I'm just kind of curious, like why you've seen such a discrepancy in the two.
Well, I almost feel naive saying this because I think I've always been aware of it, but you listen with your eyes. That's always been something I've known since I was young and also in the music industry. But being a Goodwill Ambassador, and also I'm an ambassador with Holt International Adoption Agency, seeing how mental health is a trauma for everyone. And I'm not excusing the mental health issues here in the United States, but I see mental health is caused by so many other things. And in like places of Vietnam and a lot of places that I have worked with, it's by poverty, it's by, family trauma, generational trauma, war trauma. And I think about how a lot of the times for me personally, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I know a lot of the times for me, my mental health traumas was a choice. And it's not a choice for them. It's something that is their everyday life. I always use my birth mom an example for that. My mom, I have the birth documents, and it has her year she was born. And I remember asking, just assuming that's how they did paperwork in Vietnam. And I remember going to my mentors who are Vietnamese and going to, asking friends and this and that. And they told me that she was so poor when she was born. She doesn't know the day she was born because she was born and then she had to survive.
Wow.
There's birthday and the day she was born was the smallest non-existent thing that was on her mind. And even that brought the biggest perspective in my life, how there's a lot of trauma over there as well. But because it's such a collective trauma, the country has a lot of trauma itself, it's very hard for individuals to be recognized for mental health traumas. Vietnam is just kind of coming out of that sense because of COVID. They're seeing a lot more on Facebook, on social media, that individual people are having normal mental health issues of isolation, of depression, of anxiety, of, eating disorders. And it's finally getting to a point where, they're recognizing not the collective trauma of Vietnam, but the trauma of Vietnamese people. And that's a big move. And that's what I'm very much encouraging and trying to continue being outspoken there as much as here, because I was told that they have a lot of fear on asking and speaking out about it because, their therapists are not certified. They don't have the privileges of mental health that we do. And so they have to figure it out by themselves, which is why I also am like, oh yeah, I'm Vietnamese. I had to do that here. It is very much just themselves. But I think, that's why we worked so hard on this TEDx talk to make sure that it spoke to the Vietnamese people as well, in an appropriate way, because a lot of the times what I say in America it means a completely different thing in Vietnam. And so that was a big education as well.
That's very cool. So what kind of things what are your biggest focuses right now with your mental health advocacy?
Right now I am continuing, I by popular demand, am working on a mental health blog. And I'm really excited about it and would love that. I'll reach out when I need collaborations.
Of course. Yeah. And, always happy.
Yeah. And then I spoke to my booking agent today, and we have some really exciting adaptions within mental health public speaking that we're really excited to launch within the next couple of months as well. And my gotcha day is actually next month, November 10th. And what is
a gotcha day for people who don't know? Because when you had first said that yesterday, I was like, guys, I actually thought, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I thought it was a Vietnamese word. I was gotcha day? I was like, oh, what's that mean? So, I mean, please enlighten my listeners who maybe already know, but I didn't, so.
I barely knew what it was growing up too. So it's okay. A gotcha day is the day that I was adopted. And within the adoption community, we call it gotcha because, they got us.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha.
That's what our parents would always say. But it's the day that I was adopted. So as much as I always say, my birthday gave me life, but my gotcha day gave me the life that I have today.
Love that. It's beautiful.
And so, thank you. And so I very much try to give back during that time. And so I have partnered through my ambassadorship, some really amazing sponsorships with Saigon Children, which is a charity within Vietnam, and the Lotus Foundation. I just reached out to them, trying to help as many people as I can, especially, understanding the privilege I have in this life and how it is. I always recognize privilege as a responsibility. As when you have a privilege, it's your responsibility to help those who don't have that privilege.
100%. Yeah.
And so Vietnam, $1 is 25,000 Vietnamese dong, which is their currency. And a cheap meal in Vietnam is about 2,000 Vietnamese
Wow.
dong, which is a couple cents
Yeah.
for us. And to think that some people can't even afford that, you very much am trying to just bring awareness and donations and, you know, my support to Vietnam, especially, you know, after COVID. There's as much trauma as any country who has had COVID. And I think
Right.
a lot of the times, you know, and I've been guilty of this too. Everyone's been guilty. We're all, you know, in the end, somewhat you know, only look to see what we want to see. And I think we are all so concerned of what's happening within our own country, which is a very valid thing to do. But I think it's still, you know, it's all right to be everyone else in the world who I always say COVID was the one thing that affected the entire world.
Yeah.
All the emotions are the exact same. Each mind, each country just has different people who feel that emotion differently. But it's the same emotion.
Yeah.
So it's just being aware that, you know, it's a big world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, of course.
We all just have to be kind and compassionate to everyone. And that's what I very much try to do with my career, with my life, but especially during my gotcha day time with Vietnam.
That's so great. And it's so true. I mean, like this idea of just shared trauma can be a really powerful thing. Like it's something that it's tough. And I always kind of say that it's like, it's so shitty to see such beautiful things kind of come from a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, but it's like at the end of the day, you're still left with some really beautiful things. And we are in a time right now where it has been tough for a lot of people, and obviously people are going to put their family and their, you know, their people first. But, you know, we are all going through this, and it's like, and just to hear about the countries who need that extra support from, you know, countries where we do have privilege and thus responsibility, like you said, it's great that you're raising that awareness. So yes, that's really, really great. I do have one last question for you. Before I hop into the question though, I just wanted to know if there was like anything, you know, else that you really kind of feel that you want to share before we kind of wrap up today.
I mean, my TEDx talk was a very special moment. And so I hope that everyone can use it and need it when they need it. I feel like, especially things when I come across YouTube that, you know, I might need that day. I just always want people to be aware that you don't need to look at it now, but if you ever need support, if you ever feel like you're alone, you can just watch that TED talk and watch, you know, so many others to know that you are understood. And that's what I very much try to do with my social media accounts, is I keep my DMs open if anyone just needs to feel understood and not alone, that I'm
Heard.
there for them.
Yeah. What are your socials? Give it a quick plug.
I was very, very lucky that I never had to buy the domain Amy Corey from another Amy Corey.
Try finding Kyle Moore anywhere, okay? Impossible.
I'm so sorry. I was so shocked that Amy Corey was not taken.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. You'd think Amy Corey, it's a pretty, like, you know, standard roll of the dice, but
it's two first names. I was just like, I'm gonna have to spend thousands of dollars, but I own it.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's just amycorey.com and Amy Corey across the web. So
awesome. Good stuff. So the last question that I have for you is, at the end of every episode, I like to give out a challenge to my listeners. Just something that they can implement into their day, their week, their month, year, life, whatever it may be, just to live a happy, more fulfilled, more mindful life. And based on all of your incredible work, your incredible experiences, I would love to know what challenge that you would put forth to anybody who's listening to this podcast right now.
First of all, I love that.
Thank you.
Like that's great. I think for me, what has helped me probably the most in my life is taking some time. If I'm feeling any type of emotion that I don't want inside me, I don't want within my aura, my energy, it's an exercise that I do a lot. And it has to go through the mentality to be able to have the relief and the happiness from it. And so when I'm a big journal person, And so I have this one journal where if I'm feeling a really dark emotion, if I'm feeling something that I don't know how to communicate and I don't know if I'm ready to communicate, but I just need to let it out. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, I write it. Everything, no matter how dark it is, I write it and I let it live on that paper, but it cannot live within me.
Love that.
And so it's almost word vomiting onto a paper and letting it have its space, letting it exist until you are ready to deal with it, but to not let it poison within yourself.
That's exactly what this thing is right here for me.
I love that.
Amazing. Good stuff. Amy, honestly, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we had the chance to connect and that you've come on and shared your story with my audience. And I certainly hope that a few of them will reach out, because I'm really proud of the community that we've built over here. And I think that you would be well embraced in said community. So thank you so much. And anytime you want to come back, just let me know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you have an amazing platform and podcast. And thank you for letting me be a part of it.